4. We bid the last guests goodbye shortly after 11 p.m., and Jenna hugged me on the porch, thanking me for my efforts in planning and executing the celebration. That was one of the more thoughtful things anyone has ever done for me. I want you to know how much I appreciate you, my love, she said, punctuating her words with a deep, sensual kiss. I pulled her close, drawing her breasts into my chest, my hands feeling the chiseled yoga muscles in her back through her shirt. Despite an evening of steady drinking, my arousal was instant, now pressing into Jenna's stomach. We hadn't made love in over a week, and my body ached for her. "Hey, what's going on down there, fella?" she joked. "He's just showing his appreciation for the birthday girl. He has a nice present for you." "Is that so? Well, let's get inside then. It's getting cold out here," Jenna said. Indeed, the warmth of the sunny spring day had vanished with the sun hours ago, and the temperature dropped to somewhere in the 40s. Back inside, Jenna moved about the kitchen and began collecting some dishes, but I told her to stop, reminding her that part of my gift was relieving her of any cleanup duties. I preferred to wake up to a tidy kitchen, but my priorities were straight. I'd just cover any food worth saving and stick it in the fridge so we could enjoy each other in the bedroom. The dishes would still be there in the morning, and I'd handle it all when Jen was back at her yoga studio. "I'll take care of all of this. You do what you need to do, and I'll meet you in bed in a minute," I said, and Jenna agreed. A minute later, I heard the shower running in the bathroom attached to our bedroom. I clapped my hands in anticipation, and figuring I had 10 minutes now, I started competing in one of my favorite one-man games, the one where I see how fast I could clean up. By the time she left the bathroom, I had nearly finished everything, so I took a few extra minutes to wipe down the counters and stovetop, start the dishwasher, and even prep the coffee for the morning. Perfection. Pleasantly drunk and full of satisfaction from the day's efforts, I turned out all the lights and made my way to the bedroom, now in anticipation of joining Jenna's warm, naked body under the covers. When I pulled back the covers, there was just enough ambient light coming from the essential oil diffuser that sat on the nightstand to see that not only was she wearing her pajamas, but she was asleep. I thought about waking her, as she could not have been asleep for long, but she was already breathing deeply and rhythmically, with a tiny, adorable snore punctuating her exhales. Of course, she was tired, I thought, and I put the covers back in place. She'd had a long, emotional day, and I'd noticed that she'd let herself enjoy more wine than usual. I cursed myself for not just leaving the kitchen for the morning and waiting for her in bed. While the rational part of me understood the circumstances of the situation, the emotional side felt rejected. I hated the familiar, bitter question that popped into my head again. Didn't I do enough? I should have just gotten into bed next to her, but that's not what I did. Instead, I went back into the living room, hit the lights, and grabbed another bottle of beer from the fridge. I knew I needed nothing more to drink, but I wanted some reward now that sex was off the table. I knew I'd pay the tax tomorrow, but fuck it. That was tomorrow. Curled up on the couch with a blanket, the only sound in the house was the quiet hum of the dishwasher. Sitting in the dark room, I looked toward the lake, seeing only the lights from the houses on the other side of the small bay we sat on. A few houses left floodlights on all night long, polluting the skies, and I fantasized about shooting out the bulbs as I thought back to the party and the pleasant conversations I'd had. Jenna had a fine celebration, and I felt good about the impression I'd made among her circle. I lifted my bottle to the ceiling, toasting myself on a job well done, before taking a healthy swig. I wondered if any of the guests had posted any photos of our place, so I pulled out my phone and checked Facebook. A little red message icon grabbed my attention first. Clicking it, my heart skipped a beat when I saw the name of the sender. Nina St. Clair. Nina was my first girlfriend. More than that, really. She was my first love, and I was hers. It's easy to discount teenage love when we get older, but the love I'd felt for Nina at 16 was as real and as deep as any love I'd ever experienced. We'd lost our virginities together, and the relationship lasted through our junior years in college, when the distance between our present offered too many temptations, and the distance between our futures grew too wide. Nina was still my longest relationship, over 5 years. When things with Tommy and my parents went to shit, it was Nina and her family that provided me with a consistent source of love, comfort, and support. By the end of high school, I ate more meals at her house than I did at my own. I made a mental note to thank her mother for that generosity if I ever crossed paths with her again. We'd broken up at my hand, an act for which I still carried guilt. After graduating from college, she surprised me by taking solace in the arms of another high school classmate, Casey Lynch. He and I ran in different circles and were never friends. I knew little about him other than he'd grown up on a dairy farm on the outskirts of town and seemed to recall him being into tractors and country music. I thought she'd shortchanged herself by marrying him, thinking that he would keep her world small, anchoring her to Baker's Falls for as long as they were together. But of course, part of me just resented him for having the audacity to marry my ex-girlfriend. Last I'd heard, Casey was pushing policies for an insurance company. The last time I'd seen Nina was the night before Thanksgiving several years earlier at Duffy's, the local dive bar. She was with Casey, and after we shared a quick, awkward hug, I offered him my hand, which he squeezed excessively hard while giving me an expressionless look, cementing my opinion of him as a tool. These days, my relationship with Nina existed only in my memories and liking each other's posts online. She and Casey had 2 cute young daughters together, and seeing photos of her with their children gave me a window into the path not taken. I took another swallow of beer and clicked on the message. Hey Alex, long time. Sorry to contact you on Facebook, but I don't think I have a current email address for you. Hope this finds you well. I love seeing your photos of out west. So beautiful and different from here. Need to get out there one day. Anyway, I'm writing to you with an invitation. I'm the advisor for the National Honor Society at Bakers Falls High School, and this year we've created what we're calling the Wall of Distinction to honor distinguished alums. I'm pleased to share that you've been nominated by me to be in the first class of inductees. I must say, I really thought your book was great, and I'm so happy for your success, though not surprised. If you're willing and able, during the ceremony for the new Honor Society class, we'd ask that you give a brief speech to impart any wisdom you'd like to share with the kids. Here's the catch. The event is in 3 weeks on Saturday, May 7th. I know it's really short notice, long story, but we could contribute $300 towards your airfare. Keep in mind, your headshot and bio would be displayed by the main office, and you'd get a commemorative plaque and everything. Oh, and if that's not enough, you can consider this your ultimate revenge on the Honor Society. Ha! Don't think I forgot what happened to you way back when. If you could let me know your thoughts, Alex, I'd really appreciate it. Would be great to see you. Nina. A cool tingle rolled down the back of my head and halfway down my spine, as if I were showering under a stream of pulsating electrons. I noticed the sensation felt quite similar to my body's reaction to the bee's venom this morning. I clicked through to Nina's page, flipping through the same dozen profile pictures I'd committed to memory over the past several years. Still had that beautiful smile. Fit. Cute kids. I knew where all the local photos had been taken in town, and while it all looked familiar, it felt like relics of a past life. Because it was. I clicked back to read through the invitation again. Like most people, I enjoyed being invited to things. We all want to feel in demand, don't we? Thanks to Risk Bliss, I received regular invitations to do keynote speaking gigs at several coaching conferences every year. Not wanting to interfere with Blackstone, I agreed to 3 or 4 of the bigger events each year. My quote was $7,500 for 50 minutes and included a business class ticket and a suite. Part of the deal was that I'd also get a table to sell signed copies of my book after the event, and this would usually net me an extra $1,000 or $2,000. I'd paid for the renovations to the kitchen almost entirely from the previous year's speaking revenue. On top of the easy money, there's an ego boost that comes with being on stage. Just ask any bass player in a middling rock band. Once someone sees you perform on an elevated platform, you are perceived as being more attractive than you really are. People are nicer, more respectful. Many of them want you to sign things or give you money. A few of them will want to have sex with you. It's all very intoxicating. Anytime I spoke at an event, if I took a seat at the hotel bar that evening, it was a safe bet that I would be approached and propositioned. Temptation was part of the gig, and I was still learning how to walk that tightrope without falling. Of course, this invitation offered no financial rewards. In fact, it would cost me money to do it. That would usually be the end of any deliberation, but this was my hometown, and this was Nina doing the asking. Looking back, 8 or 9 beers deep was not the wisest time to be making any decisions, but if there's one power alcohol has, it can make you believe your own lies. At that moment, sitting alone, I knew I was drunk, but I would swear to you that this had no bearing on my ability to think clearly, so I pondered the invitation instead of going to bed. Working through my mental decision tree went something like this. Do I care about being honored at a school that didn't recognize me when I was there? No, of course not. Fuck them. But who was them, anyway? A sad sack librarian who gave me the shaft? A couple of teachers who probably retired years ago? My guidance counselor whose advice had been for me to go into engineering because he read an article saying that's where the jobs would be? During my high school years, I felt like I was climbing out of a hole that I'd been pushed into, and now, finally, I was ascending Rainier. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I had something to say about the climb. Something that felt more important than goosing my team of wealthy millennials to sell more cryptic financial products so we'd all hit our numbers. Sure, high school was a lifetime ago, but whenever I thought back to those years, the old heaviness in my chest returned instantly, like someone hung a 2-pound weight around my heart. I remember how lost I felt back then, like I was searching in the dark without even knowing what I was hoping to find. I could speak to those feelings of uncertainty and confusion, and what if I could say something that helped just one kid? That would be the best revenge of all, and the only compelling reason to go back. Do I really want to go back home? Well, it would be easier not to go, but it was always easier not to go. If I were coaching one of my clients in the same situation, I'd likely tell them that the reasons were just excuses. I hadn't been back east for over a year. The last time I was home, it was to attend the funeral of a friend's dad. Before that, I hadn't been to Baker's Falls since my mother's death over 3 years ago, not long before Jenna and I met. From my mother's funeral, I learned how important it was to be there when a friend lost a parent. You never forgot who showed up for you and who did not. I wasn't around for most of my mother's decline, and I'd been in the air, racing home to say goodbye at the moment of her passing. Another weight I carried. I left Tommy alone to carry the burden of caring for our mom, a job he handled with levels of patience and grace that exceeded my capabilities. As for Big Jake, my father, my last contact with him came on my birthday a couple months ago as a 2-word text. Happy birthday. He couldn't spare an emoji or an exclamation point or be bothered to type my name, so his message made me feel worse than had he forgotten altogether. Thinking of my father made me not want to go home, but there was a solid chance I wouldn't even see him as he'd left 6 Maple Street behind years ago. That's probably where I'd end up staying, and it would be good to spend some time with my brother. I noticed that being in the company of Jenna's friends all day, as pleasant as they all were, it had me thinking of my friends back home, too. It'd be fun to see them all, and maybe some of them would come to the ceremony if I invited them. On to the practical questions. What about the book proposal? Yes, I was feeling the time crunch. But I write really well on planes, and I could use the flying time to revise the manuscript and get it out of my hands. Could I make the date work? Probably. A quick glance at my calendar showed no binding commitments, just a rec league soccer game on Sunday that I could miss. I blocked my weekends off from work, and if I stayed into the beginning of the week, I could do any of my Blackstone coaching sessions remotely if I needed to. My only concern was Damon's unpredictable nature. There was always a chance that he might declare some sort of emergency, and if I wasn't there to jump when he called, he could use it against me if our negotiations remained unsettled. But he'd already stepped over a boundary line today, so fuck him too. What about Jenna? It's telling that I didn't think of her first, but I didn't. Jenna had not yet made the trip to Baker's Falls, nor had she met my father or Tommy yet. None of this was her fault. She'd expressed her desire to make a trip east with me several times. She wanted to know all of me, she'd say, to see the people and the place that shaped me. Of course, I knew such a trip was inevitable, especially given our more recent conversations around marriage and kids, and yet I dragged my feet whenever it came to making an actual plan. Perhaps this was the time. As silly as the award would be, I imagined Jenna sitting in the audience, watching me with pride as I was being honored. She'd only seen me speak once at a gig in Orlando, and I believed I was much better on stage these days. It was time for her to meet Tommy and the gang, and I could even imagine Big Jake turning up if my visit promised the company of a pretty young woman. Though it would be black fly season, perhaps we'd be able to squeeze in a night or two in the Adirondacks. I could rent out an Airbnb on a lake, and we could connect on my home turf. The more I thought about it, the more the idea of creating a special experience for Jenna took hold, and for the first time, a sense of enthusiasm eclipsed my usual feelings of vulnerability in taking her to Baker's Falls. Elated, I rose from the couch to retrieve a fresh bottle from the refrigerator. "One more," I whispered, a fib I told myself many times at this hour of the night, and cracked open another beer. I did this with the full awareness that I shouldn't. Part of my mind knew there would be little extra bang for the buzz at this point. I'd really just be jacking up the price I'd have to pay in a few hours. But I'd already crossed the threshold of being drunk. I'd already resigned myself to sleeping in the guest bedroom, because if I tried to sneak into bed next to Jenna now, it was only a matter of time before my boozy smell or snoring would awaken her, and she'd force me out anyway. Better to avoid the drama. So again, fuck it. The calendar where Jenna wrote all of her plans hung next to the refrigerator. She was old school like that. I flipped the page to May to check on the weekend of the 7th. My heart dropped into my stomach as I read the words written in the squares. Spring Yoga Retreat. Jenna was hosting a multi-day retreat where her clients would be flying in from all around the country. I knew about it. She'd told me, probably a few times. I hadn't paid enough attention to the dates to commit them to memory. And just like that, the pilot light of resentment found a fresh fuel source. My thoughts darkened. Of course she's busy. Fucking yoga. Again. Wasn't she always busy with the yoga studio on weekends? Wasn't that her priority these days? There was the studio, her staff, her clients, and me. In that order. At least that was my perception. We hadn't had an entire weekend together with just the two of us in months. Hell, she never would have made it to her own birthday party had I not devised a plan to pull her away from the studio a few hours early. She made a point of expressing her appreciation, but words were cheap. How did she show that appreciation? I did all the cleanup, and she fell asleep. I understand that she was tired, but this wasn't just about tonight. For the past couple of weeks, she rebuffed all of my advances with some excuse or another. Too tired. I have my period. Later. Later never seemed to come around, and I couldn't help but wonder why I was knocking myself out in this relationship if I couldn't get laid once in a while. Our sex was consistently toe-curling, so why weren't we making the space for it? When was the last time Jenna looked at me with the same eyes of desire that those women at the conferences did? Part of me knew that I was just being needy, but I missed her touch and attention. I returned to the couch and my eyes went to the photo album on the coffee table. Jenna had pulled it out during the party, and I watched from afar as she and a couple friends flipped through the pages to reminisce and remember Jason. I reached for it, opening it in the middle. The photo captured Jenna and Jason with Nick and Hannah on the patio of some après bar, all baby-faced and smiling, hoisting their drinks in the sunshine in celebration after a day of skiing. I'd seen the photo before, of course. I'd seen them all. Seeing these photos and hearing the stories gave me a sense of Jason, as well as an appreciation of Jenna's loss. During one of my meetings with Damon after Jenna and I had become a couple, he asked me about my personal life, and I made the mistake of sharing a part of myself with him. I told him our story, and he made it all about himself, voicing his concerns about following in another man's footsteps. I admitted to him that Jenna's baggage could feel heavy, but countered that we all carry baggage into our relationships, and at least Jenna's had come with a vivid warning label. He laughed again, shook his head dismissively, and said, "Sounds to me like you might be working a little too hard, Coach." I remember how irritating those words sounded to me, how patronizing his calling me Coach sounded. In the moment, I pretended otherwise. Looking back, as clueless as Damon could be in his relationships, he saw something in me to which I was blind. I'd just thrown her a surprise party, for Christ's sakes. What I failed to see was that she never asked for any of it. So many of my efforts were driven by my need for a pat on the head, to be told that I was a good boy, worthy of love and attention. But I didn't know any of this yet. Couldn't see it. What I did know was that I'd worked hard to make Jenna happy today, and that she'd fallen asleep. I knew I wanted there to be another photo album, one filled with Jenna's memories of me. But there was none. I closed the album and put it back on the coffee table. I took another deep pull from my beer and grabbed my phone to type a short message. "I'll be there, Nina. Axe."